Everybody, hope you're doing well today and you're sitting down right now with popcorn because I've got a portion of a debate that is really amazing and it touches on a lot of different topics that I really enjoy, like objective morality and the consistency of the atheist in saying that we have objective morality, or if we don't, if we have subjective morality, and how consistent that is in their views. And so in this particular case, I think the atheists win a gold Olympic medal for their outstanding mental gymnastics. And so who we have in this debate, we have Jeff Durbin, Saitan Bruggencate, and Paul Viggiano. Took place in 2015. And those are the three Christians on the left. On our right, we have Bruce Gleason, Andrew Breeding, and Sean Taylor. Those are the atheists on the right. And an audience member asked a particular question, and this is when it got really heated, really good. And so stay tuned. I want to say hi to people in the chat though before I go over there. James Apperson and Chris Foster and Doki Doki. Thank you so much for your super sticker, Doki Doki. Really appreciate that. The Christian Carpenter, Hellbound Heathen, and good stuff. So good to see all of you today. So I hope you're ready because I got this really good portion of this debate. Here we go.
Earlier you said you had faith, right?
Confidence.
That's faith.
Well, in today's world, confidence is a secular term. He get it from the Greek. They do this all the time.
Latin.
This word comes from a Christian word or something. That's fine. Latin. Thank you very much. I'm not a linguist.
Okay.
So it's confidence. I have zero religious supernatural faith. I have confidence in my opinions.
Okay, all right. Confidence in your opinions?
Yeah, what's your question?
You have confidence. The confidence that you have is in just your opinions.
Well, that's all we have.
Okay.
I'm going to get to this guy over here because I'm really afraid something's going to happen to his arm.
I can do this all night. If we don't extend this, we can go to midnight.
This is for the agnostics.
There aren't any here, sir, so you're going to have to frame your question in a different way.
That's correct.
So why is it worse, in your opinion, to eat a zucchini than to eat a baby?
Wow, I don't know why this is.
Boy, that's such a
difficult.
hard one. Let me think about that.
Look, there's a vast number of answers to your question, and I don't know why they're not obvious. Right.
Yeah.
That's very adorable.
The bottom line is he's going to have to establish that there is some sort of objective reason why he's saying that you should not eat a baby.
Listen, I have 2 children, and I could not eat them no matter who told me to. If you put a gun to my head, it's not going to happen, okay? I physically cannot get myself to do that. Now, maybe that's because God created us with a specific morality that says don't eat children. Maybe it's because we have been developed. I know most of you don't like evolution here, but if I'm willing to say maybe God created us and designed us with that specific morality, please allow me to say maybe we just evolved to a position to where that is within our nature, just like other animals don't do that sort of thing, and just like some animals do that sort of thing under certain circumstances.
Animals a lot of times operate on behaviorism. And so what they do is they can anticipate particular actions. They realize that, for example, if they do something that ends up being rewarding, they'll do it again. They'll repeat that behavior. And if they do something where they end up getting punished or they end up getting hurt, they will not do that behavior. And so animals act that way. Now, humans are distinct from animals. We're exceptional. We're exceptional within this planet. God made us in the image of God. That's something really important to note. And he made man and women in the image of God. Again, really important to note.
I cannot do that. For just like if a baby was about to fall off this table and it's not my baby, I can't think about, well, did Christ tell me, what's the scripture that tells me to catch a falling baby, or is it right or is it wrong? There's no thinking. I'm going to catch that baby.
And
one of the reasons he's going to catch that baby and go after that baby, save that baby, is because he has a conscience. That's the beauty. Romans 2:15, we're all given a conscience by God. And the conscience leads to things like our proper intuitions and also our moral reasoning. So it's all completely related within our conscience. And that also speaks to why we do things, why we do self-sacrificing things. Probably the highest level of a gift that you can give somebody, just as Jesus pointed out, was the self-sacrifice. He gave his life. He laid up his life for others. We can see soldiers doing that on the battlefield sometimes. Great, tremendous sacrifices. So this question right here is really good.
Can I ask one question
Yeah,
for
1 second.
clarification?
1 second. 1 second. That's the basic reason. I don't have a choice. I just can't do that. And then all the way to the pitiful reason of I would rather not get arrested. We have laws. And we have laws because we are a social species. We live in communities and we have to deal with that. And if we all thought that eating babies was okay, we wouldn't be here much longer. And for most of us, we want to be here much longer. So that's why we don't do that.
Can I ask a point of clarification? Are you guys pro-choice?
Mic drop. So if they're into perpetuating the population and they're talking about that out of one side of their mouth, and then on the other side, they're pro-choice and they're for the elimination of unborn babies who are not wanted, that's being hypocritical. This is where the mental gymnastics really kicks in, and we can see what happens with this. They kind of look like the canary in the coal mine, or they look look at the guy on the left. Let's see, who is that? That's Bruce Gleason. He looks like, uh-oh, here we go. Oh no. I want to say, what did I see here? I saw something. I have family members and exes who never developed a conscience. There are some people who have seared their conscience. The Bible tells us that. And obviously we could go back in history and say, certainly Stalin, Pol Pot, Hitler, a lot of the Nazis, Mengele working under the Nazis. We have a lot of different examples of that. Mao Zedong, definitely a lot of examples of people who've seared their conscience, unfortunately. But if we're in our natural state, we have a conscience. And that's one of the reasons that we can give to support the presence and evidence of God. The fact that we have these moral consciences that not only tell us to do things through behaviorism, what's pleasant, what's unpleasant, what we could get punished or rewarded for. It also actually speaks to us doing things that could be extremely unpleasant, but we're doing it because we want to help somebody else. Like the idea, for example, of Jesus taking up the cross. He did that for our salvation. He took up the cross. He was beaten and whipped in a horrific way. And he did it for us and our salvation. He offers that to everyone.
Yes.
Wow. A religious and a political debate.
Thank you.
Notice that with abortions. Abortion isn't really a political issue. Abortion is a moral issue, a human issue, a life issue. 95% of biologists, one study showed this, it was over 5,000 biologists were surveyed. 95% of them said human life begins at conception. So the question is, if human life begins at conception and all humans are persons, a human being is entitled to life. We're given a right to life here in our U.S. Constitution, for example. And so to take away that right, you have to deny the humanity of the human. And a lot of people do that by trying to create a word called personhood. Now, personhood recently in the 90s was described as something that others attribute to someone. And the interesting thing about this particular study from the 90s, and also some studies that followed up with that in the 2000s, is they were looking at the idea of person. Person is, again, a human life. It's somebody's just nature having that right. And the distinction of personhood, where others attribute the right to you. They'll say, okay, you're a person. This is under personhood. And they do that because they can realize the baby in the womb, they can say, does not have personhood if others do not feel that that baby is a person. But they also extended that out. They looked at that into what about people with dementia very late in life? And people who were caregivers were much more likely to attribute personhood to those people. Others were ready to take it away. Pretty sad.
Boy, you're really going off the ledge there.
What it shows here is atheists are not consistent with their own claims. You guys demonstrate.
I don't know if you just noticed what he said. Atheists are not consistent with their own claims. And of course, we've got Bruce saying, that's right. That's right. We're not consistent. Are we supposed to be consistent? Who says consistency is something that's important? Who says?
Talked a lot.
Listen,
Let
we're
me
not gonna
say,
do the
I'm asking for 60
abortion
seconds.
debate
You
right
had
now.
2 minutes. I'll ask for 60 seconds. When a question was asked over on this side of the room about molestation, or we asked questions about violence towards children, you engaged the audience with mockery. rather than justification.
Pardon me?
What we
I don't-
need, let me just finish the thought. What we need is something more than the assumption of the value of human beings. We get to do that as Christians, but what you need to do is demonstrate that it is in fact objectively, according to your atheistic
It's not
view of
objectively,
the
Jeff.
world,
I'm going to stop you right there.
objectively evil to do such a thing to a child. Now, I've already demonstrated that you're not consistent with your claims
No, you
because you're pro-choice.
Nope, you didn't.
You go beyond letting a child fall off the table.
No.
You advocate for its being
No.
spliced up in the womb.
No,
No.
and this is
I
this
don't
is
know
a
where
much-
you get that. Why are you applauding? He's wrong. He's making a misstatement. And why are you applauding? I don't
because
get
he
it.
said abortion. Now they don't like us.
Yeah,
You're going to have to do more.
If I may,
Listen, this
Oh.
is a critically
Well, I don't wanna
thinking
get
Christian
into
audience.
abortion.
You're going to have to do
We're going
much
to the next
more
question, gentlemen.
than-
If I,
Thank you.
1 second. If I can just clarify something. And I felt bad for.
I will, to the person, the rabbit hole, yes, I will post that study. You can find it if you Google it. Just type in 95% biologists, abortion at conception or fertilization, and you'll get the study. But I'll Google it and I'll put it in the description just for you so you can see the study with the 95% biologists.
I don't
for
think that
Bruce
was
a little
fair.
bit because, you looked kind of offended and insulted, and it's important for us to recognize this isn't the argument. Isn't you're a bad person and he's a good person.
I agree with that.
We got to not go there.
No.
The argument isn't even you're not ethical, we're ethical. The question is the basis
Yes.
for the ethics.
The ethics. I know.
don't-
I can
don't
answer
take-
that question. Paul, would you like me to answer that
But
question?
I just want to make sure that
I can
already
give you a
did.
because
specific
I
example.
feel bad if you've walked
You're
away
talking about
feeling
abortion.
attacked personally. But you understand? Do you understand what's being asked when people ask these questions about the babies and all that stuff? You understand what they're asking? They want a rock solid foundational answer as to why those types of things are absolutely wrong. Things that you think are absolutely wrong. We're not saying you don't think they're absolutely wrong. We want to know why you think they're absolutely
Paul
wrong.
and I've given now a number of reasons why they're wrong. What do you mean? No?
Something beyond
It-
personal
it
preference
just
or
didn't-
it's icky.
I didn't say it was a personal preference.
Well, you gave the answer of a pragmatic, we need to continue to exist type of answer.
That's right.
But I don't think
Yeah,
that's
there are
passing
real
muster.
reasons why we don't do it. There are
So the pragmatic continue to exist, that gets debunked right away with his pro-choice.
very real reasons why we don't do
But
such things.
the
And I'll
question-
ask
right.
again. I'll ask again because I asked Jeff something earlier. Everyone here would agree that if one person, one individual, tells you these are the things that you should do and these are the things that you should not do, just simply following such prescriptions would not be a good place to get your morals. That's not a good way to get your morals. And Jeff admitted,
Can I
I would
answer
have to I would have to look at where they got these ideas from. What are the reasons? What in all reality, in this reality that we find ourselves in and experience, what's the result of acting in such ways?
But
What
Sean,
is the
Bruce,
result?
That's actually not
Sean,
what
what is the
respectfully, can you? I think most people.
He's saying, what is the result? That is the consequentialist view. So the consequentialist a lot of times has the view that the consequences are what matters and that determines the morality. The problem with that is it's saying that the consequence is also given the credit of being sort of the source of the morality. So it's circular reasoning. Another thing that you can think about with this consequentialism is it's also, if you say the ends justifies the means, you can see the Machiavellian side of that, the consequentialist argument. The outcomes justify the means it takes to get to the outcomes. That's a problem. Now, we have the greatest good for the greatest number of people is the idea of utilitarianism. It's just an extension of consequentialism. And these fall into the utilitarian ethics. And so you can see some issues with that. The issue with that is it can end up harming people. If you think the greatest good, and maybe Stalin thought this way, the greatest good for him was to minimize this number of people in society because getting rid of a lot of people in society led to other people being able to eat more food. And so the greatest number of people after he minimized that was a bit of a problem. And so that's something that some people might say. Or Shell Oil in Nigeria. At one point, Shell Oil had dumped a bunch of oil into the Ogoni region. It was a tribal region in Nigeria. And the question was, do they bother picking up the spill? Do they bother cleaning it up? Because the greatest number of people would be their stockholders and other stakeholders, customers, and all of the other people involved, and it would be costly to clean it up. And the Agona people is just a small number of people in the region. So if you used utilitarian or consequentialism ethics, you've got a problem because you're going to end up harming those people. Now, the better sort of ethics is deontological ethics. And that's the idea that you have a moral duty to do what's right. And under that one, you have the moral duty not to harm people. And you can use the deontological ethics when you're looking at the pro-choice versus pro-life arguments. The deontological ethics say that the duty is to preserve the baby's life. Life begins at conception. Here we go.
People in this room think you have not answered the question, because what we're looking for is, can you state unequivocally that such a behavior is absolutely wrong?
Which behavior?
I can.
The behavior of
Generally, I
the
can.
things
Paul.
you would do to a child, these things I don't want to
Yes.
say,
Yes. Yes.
not pragmatically,
No.
not subjectively, but
Yes.
absolutely. And that's what everybody wants to hear the
Yes.
answer to. All right, fire away.
Okay, I can answer this. So, having studied ethics, and maybe you guys are familiar with some of these ethical theories: Kantian categorical imperative, virtue ethics, maximizing consequentialism. These are all non-evolutionary based ethics, which do not posit a God as either at any point as a fundamental piece of justifying, and that we are able to that these very brilliant philosophers have been able to establish ethical theories that grant moral absolutes without positing God.
Go for it.
And you
Yeah,
understand.
I mean, you've quoted,
Yeah.
you've given some
I
names,
have a much
but you
simpler
haven't
one,
really
Paul.
answered.
Would you like my answer, Paul?
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
Bruce,
All
can
right,
you
go
be
ahead.
something,
It's as
Bruce, real fast, so
objective
that
as
you
you
don't have to
can
keep
get.
repeating?
It's objective.
Okay, so something not preference, not it's uncomfortable, something
No,
that can answer
I'm not
the
going
person.
to agree to that, but I'll
some-
give the best answer I
Something
can.
that can answer the person that doesn't agree with you.
Sure, that
There are
would
lots
be
of people
answerable.
who like to fly planes into buildings to hurt people. Argue
Mostly
with them.
based on religion, Jeff.
Well, we
by the
want
way.
to, yeah. And you don't have a problem with that. Preach the
I
gospel.
do have
Preach-
a problem with
Bruce,
that,
Bruce,
as
preach the
everyone
gospel
else
to them.
does.
Preach the gospel to
Here's
them.
the answer, Jeff. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. The moral dilemma is the decision to be made, if you have a moral dilemma, is the one that causes lesser harm. That's it.
That's utilitarianism.
It's simple. Yes, it is, but
Announcing it
that's-
doesn't prove it. Justify it.
Most people will elect the lesser harm.
I have to note something. So they've done studies where they looked at the train track studies. And in the train track, you've got a train barreling down a track. And you have 4 people tied to the track. And you have a very heavy-set person standing next to you. The train one says, okay, the utilitarian says, do I save the 4 people by pushing the heavy-set person onto the track? And that would stop the train, apparently, from hitting those 4 people. Or do you not do anything because you would harm that one person? So you just decide you're not going to do anything. And those 4 people end up dying. When they did studies, people who have high levels of utilitarian ethics, they said they would push the person onto the tracks because it would minimize the harm to the other 4. And the deontological people said that they wouldn't do anything. They didn't want to harm that person. They didn't want to proactively push somebody onto the tracks, somebody who was just standing next to them innocently, assuming that the other people maybe took the initiative that they wanted to commit suicide, and that's why they were tied up on the tracks. But the interesting thing about that is they've correlated utilitarian ethics with psychopathy. So psychopathics, people who have high levels of psychopathy, also tend to be utilitarian. Again, Machiavellian, ends justifies the means. That came from the Prince.
Not everybody.
Correct.
Do
but
we have
most people.
prisons?
There's no absolute.
So Bruce, preach the gospel to the child
scenario.
molester.
But who
Preach
gets
the
to
gospel to the
decide?
liar.
Who gets to decide what is harmful?
Well, that's why I agree in subjective morality, because in some cultures, there is no objective reality, Paul.
Okay,
you.
so
There is no lawgiver
Thank you,
giving
Bruce.
it.
All
If
right.
you say your God is giving your law to you, just pick any other religion in the world giving their law to them. There
Thank
is
you,
no
Bruce.
That's a red herring.
Remember,
reality.
folks, Bruce could be wrong about that.
Well, not about that, because it's fact.
So
It's
what?
evidence.
Well,
Yeah, so what?
Thank you, guys.
We have the next question here, gentlemen.
Okay.
Where are we
so
at,
this
Chris?
is
Oh,
for
there we are.
Sean, and I think his name was Andrew.
Yes.
Okay. So finally piggybacking on this, you used evolutionary process or social contract theory as justifications for why eating babies would be wrong. If our evolutionary process, well, I don't believe in evolution, but if it had developed so that we as humans were exactly the same, except that it was that we ate our babies, or that the social contract was that we do eat our babies, would it then be justified? And for you, you had just mentioned Kantian ethics, which also includes presuppositionalism of human dignity, and also consequentialism or utilitarianism. If it maximized utility to eat our babies, would it then be obligatory for us to eat our babies?
Okay, so if we were evolutionarily developed to eat our babies, we wouldn't be here. That would be the end of our species.
Go to Planned Parenthood.
It's funny, but if you go back and you look at ancient history and you look all around the world, you're going to find that people were routinely sacrificing their kids. The Canaanites did that for one. They would sacrifice their kids, and they also did that in the Aztecs, the Incas. They were all sacrificing their kids in pretty horrific ways. Not all of their kids, obviously, or they would have gone extinct. But they would sacrifice some of their kids to gods because they felt that the gods would reward them with better crops. Same exact thing happens today. People are sacrificing their kids for their better jobs. Say they have a kid inside the womb and they realize they don't want to have that baby because they want to increase their career opportunities and all of those kind of things. You're just sacrificing the baby for the goods. It's no different than the Canaanites. No different, except for they did it once the baby was outside of the womb.
Hi, guys.
I don't think he answered the question there. I think that we're saying if it was evolutionary advantageous to do anything, not just eat babies, but anything that we feel right now in this modern society was wrong, but it evolved our species, it would not be wrong, because that's the only way we would survive. In that culture of doing something wrong.
Well, no, culture.
You agree with that, Sean?
No, I do not agree with that.
Well, see, this is part of our atheist.
Yeah,
we're going to leave and let them debate.
I'm sure you guys disagree on some things as well.
Well,
only on baptism.
Again, this gets to the point of this. I missed the joke.
You have to go ahead. Go ahead.
This gets to the earlier point that I had to make, which me personally not being convinced that there is a supernatural deity of some sort in no way develops my worldview apart from that. My morals, my intellect, my everything else. That's just one question. I'm not convinced by that. Being not convinced by that doesn't do anything else for me.
Let me explain why our ethical systems are grounded in God. See, the Christians have the good argument because we can figure out where the source of our divine morality came from. Our morality came from, I should say, our objective morality. Where did it come from? Well, if there is an objective moral lawgiver, then it's very likely that if we have moral laws. And so the question is, do we have these moral laws? Well, you can look around the world and you can just look at the idea of telling the truth. People realize that they don't want to repeat the big lie. During Stalin's time, people realized that they were being silent or just repeating the lie. I just saw a girl who was from North Korea on Jordan Peterson's channel, and she said that they had been perpetuating the lie. They lived a lie the entire time in North Korea. She was able to escape, thankfully, and she went over to South Korea, and she can speak English now, and apparently she's got a channel. She's talking a lot about the lies that were perpetuated over there. People know they should tell the truth, but the lie had been so common, and people were afraid to tell the truth because they don't want to be killed in North Korea. But you all know deep down that you should tell the truth. The truth will set you free. But the question is, if we have these objective moral values and duties to do what's right, to tell the truth, to be just, to be fair, to be loving, if we have that kind of thing, which we do, I think if we're honest, we know we do. Worldwide surveys from people like Shalom Schwartz have found that, yes, benevolence is right up there. It's a moral ought. We found from other surveys like the Globe study that benevolence, universalism, this thing called humane orientation, is something that in every single country, people know they ought to be more humane. They know that. It comes out. In every single country, the practices were less than the moral ought. They knew what is in the country was less than what they should be. So people realize that. If we have this, it's transcending generations, and it's transcending cultures, and it's transcending eras. Then what's the deal? Then we know we had come from a divine moral lawgiver. We have moral laws, which we do, comes from a divine moral lawgiver. So we do. That's the thing. And that's the interesting thing. These are moral prescriptions. This can't be explained by the sciences, which drives some scientists crazy. Biology can only explain descriptive things. It cannot explain the moral obligations that we have or the prescriptions.
If I was convinced that a specific God existed, well, then I might start following the scriptures of that God. But not being convinced that any God exists, there's no scriptures to that. So it doesn't develop anything else in my worldview.
The question is, do people actively suppress their knowledge of God? In Romans 1, it says they do. It says God has given everyone that general revelation. God has given me the general revelation when I look out the window and I see the beauty of nature. That to me, and then I compare that with pictures and images of other planets and what they look like. And that alone is enough to tell me that there's definitely some intentionality in our world. Just enough to look out the window. Now, that's a general revelation. Some people suppress it. I saw a really funny video with Randall Rouser. He was talking about Greg Kuchel's, I think it was Greg Kuchel's argument that people are suppressing the truth. It's very similar to sitting and trying to keep a beach ball underwater. That's the amount of suppression. Now, Randall was kind of offended by that approach. He thought that there were some reasons that people were suppressing the truth, that were justifying suppressing the truth. And there's certainly some people who are kind of apathetic towards God. But what happens, according to Romans, is people suppress the truth, and then God sends a powerful delusion. So they think what they're doing is correct. Maybe they don't recall the portion where they suppress the truth. Then suddenly this grand delusion comes over them. So to break free from that, watch more videos. Watch more videos and debates on God's existence. So I want to say hi to the people in the chat here. Hellbound Heathen, James Apperson, I think he left. Yep, he left. Richard Gamrat. We've got, who else here? Captive Desk. So we've got a number of different people. I saw Susan a little bit earlier. It's always good to see her. Great to see you guys. I hope you'll like, subscribe, and do come again. And just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do it all for God's glory. Before I go, I want to mention one other thing. I am going to be coming out with a video very soon that's going to talk about what they call crisis pregnancy centers or pregnancy resource centers. If you're interested in hearing about their side and what they do, and I'm going to try to get this person on my channel that somebody recommended to me, who apparently is a child of a person who was working in a crisis resource center. I've been reading up on lots of studies on crisis resource centers. And I've been listening to people like Elizabeth Warren, who is basically saying that crisis resource centers or pregnancy resource centers are pretty much just the worst things in the world, according to people like her. She is very upset with Roe v. Wade. She is out there seeming a little bit unhinged, to be honest, just definitely a little bit unhinged. But I was looking at what the claims that the PRCs are saying, and I compared them to what these others are saying. They're saying, oh, they're giving you faulty information. So my academic study that I'm working on, and I just found a co-author, but the academic study I'm working on is looking at, okay, is there a relationship between induced abortions, and breast cancer? Is there a relationship between induced abortions and infertility? And is there a relationship between abortions and preterm births? I found significant evidence to support the abortion preterm birth link. Preterm birth meaning you're having a baby before you gestate for 37 weeks or less. Significant relationships, significant meta-analytic studies, and that's pretty important to know. The other thing that I found and that was mainly with the surgical abortions. It wasn't as much with the medical, meaning the pill. Okay, so that's the surgical abortions and the preterm births. Then we have the idea of breast cancer. Now those findings are a little bit conflicting, and so I'm going to get into details on that in another video, but just know that there have been studies, especially out of the East, where people don't have the Western diets that they have, so they don't have to worry as much about not having all those control factors in there, because people are less likely to drink, less likely to smoke, more likely to be shorter, all those kind of things. Meta-analytic studies that are coming out of those countries have shown a breast cancer link, for sure, to induced abortions, either surgical or medical. And the last thing with infertility are the links that I found between abortions and pelvic inflammatory disease. PID has pretty high risk of having future infertility. It's pretty high risk if you get pelvic inflammatory disease. And there's significant links between these induced abortions and PIDs. And so I'm going to talk more about that, and we'll get into that in some future studies. I want to make sure I get this academic study published first. Then I'm going to be able to read it to you, so you can listen to it. I've already got the target journal. It's actually written already. It's pretty much done, except for I wanted my co-author to try to play the devil's advocate and to really steel man the other side, because I wanted to make sure I'm giving both sides as fairly as possible, because I also talk a lot about Planned Parenthood in that study. So I told him, if you could just sort of take the Planned Parenthood's perspectives, try to think of yourself, put yourself in their shoes, and what arguments would they make to my study, because I want to make sure we're presenting a fair and balanced research study. No, I'm not a medical doctor. Thankfully, what I can do, though, is I am a researcher. I have a PhD. Those of you who know me know that I have a PhD in business management, and it's actually in business administration PhD with specializations in international management and human resource management. But anyway, so that is not a medical field, obviously. But what I do is I go and I look at the meta-analytic studies from the medical fields, and I find out what the results are. That's where I'm getting the information from, a lot of medical journals. And so I'm looking at some, I get access to all these medical journals through my university, thankfully. So thank you so much for coming in. Isaiah 53 Learning, pretty sure that that's Florida Line. So thank you, Florida Line. And we've got Slam RN, Elizabeth Tudor. Good to see you guys. Have a great night. And please subscribe if you like this kind of content. Like, subscribe, come back. And that's what I want you to do. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.